Folks, welcome on back here for another fantastic edition of our weekly workshop, Traders Talk. Great to have all of our students and members alike inside our live trading room. Margaret, Michael, Scott, Bill, got a full house here today. Leda, Barbara, I saw Charlene just earlier, Kathleen, Joyce, Grant, Lynn, got Phil, got Ron, got Sam, all of us here live in the trading floor joining us here today. Now, if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, popping up on the bottom there, lower left, at Cyber Trading You, blocking my ugly mug partially. Be a friend, tell a friend, hit the subscribe or follow button down below if you're on YouTube or any of our social media streams or platforms alike. But otherwise, I'd said it just before to all of us on the trading floor. Today was a day. Today was literally a weekday. Nothing too spectacular, meaning, folks, coming off the craziness from last week, you can't really expect to have similar volatility, at least on a day-to-day. You got to have a couple of points where the markets are going to be stagnant, some points of consolidation. I mean, even just looking at the SPY daily chart, look at this drop off, obviously, from Wednesday last week when Trump was first talking about the tariffs. It had this huge spike up. This was the third or second largest day ever in market history, NASDAQ history, you could say, S&P otherwise. This right here. What was surprising after that point, which I think that was actually Wednesday. But basically the following day, red. That's not surprising. We actually talked about that inside our live trading room. The previous two largest market days in history, January of 2001, and then afterwards in 2008, you saw a red candle the next day. So back on Thursday of last week, it was here. This was not surprising, but we're popping back up again, right? We're still showing good life on the way up. I just don't think that we're going to keep seeing green bar after green bar after green bar after. I think there's going to be points of not just up and down, but points of just where the volume dries up in terms of consolidation. So again, I'm not expecting to have this type of volatility on a daily basis. That's why coming into a day like today, a Monday, we have Good Friday at the end of this week. So this is a holiday week, folks, right? Obviously. And hey, for any of my Jews out there like myself, Passover started on Saturday of this past weekend. So Passover is already kicking off. You got Easter Sunday, Good Friday. Obviously, markets are closed. Things should be slow on holiday weeks, right? And also today's a Monday, nonetheless, where we normally teach you. Mondays and Fridays aren't typically your most volatile days out there. So let's just take a quick look to see what did move from earlier on this morning, because we were focused at first around Apple. Apple had a big gap up over the night. I don't know if it's specific news. Was it with the tariff situation? They first said that they weren't going to apply it towards semiconductors and cell phones and blah, blah, blah. And then I think that they jumped back on that last night. Either way, you saw Apple have a huge gap up early in the morning where you would think, all right, well, unless if the markets totally puke and come back down, there should be some formative move here on Apple. Figure if not a breakout over resistance, and to see that flip into support, then at the minimum, maybe it pulls back at the open. You can get support to build and then a bounce from that point. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the latter, at least there, because of course we saw Apple drop off when the market opened up pretty much right away. And I just came off a coaching call to one of our students basically detailing this move. So I'd love to have all of our students here in the trading floor that we're in right now answer this one for me if you can. This is Apple from this morning, AAPL. Where do we have support? Where is our support on Apple looking at this picture? Anna here, one of our members inside our trading floor, saying, Josh, I did not expect tech to fall down so much from the morning. Is there any news or is it just profit taking? I'll check to see if there's additional news. I didn't really see anything that stood out to me earlier, at least since the market opened up. It could just be a form of profit taking. I would figure that would have happened, though, from Friday, from the end of last week. Holding into the weekend, I feel like there's more uncertainty with that. So it was surprising to see at least Apple move up as much as it did early. I would look for a bounce, right? A lot of us here in chat right now saying 205. Yes, this is the only support level that we got right here. 22,000, 22.7. It's on the bid out there all since 4 in the morning Eastern time. Well, case in point, long story short, what happened to Apple today? Well, obviously it dropped. But this is where there is the thought behind an entry, the thought behind, right? So you come down to it here, it goes into the 205 level, it goes under, it goes over. This right here is pristine for an entry. It's perfect for an entry. If you came to me with this trade in a coaching session and said, Josh, I went break even. Josh, I took a small loss on Apple and I got in right once it broke under, but back over $205. I would give you a grade A on the entry, an A plus on the entry. Hey, folks, quick question. What time do we normally expect reversals to happen in the stock market? We always ask that question here each and every week. What time normally do we expect reversals to happen in this market? Give or take 15 minutes, folks, right? I mean, hey, if it was 10:30 on the nose every singular day of the week, you and I would not be here in a trading room or let alone on a YouTube. You know what I mean? So give or take a little bit, but 10:30, right? Maybe 10:15-ish, maybe 10:45-ish. This falls perfectly with reversal time. Can't tell me it doesn't. It does. I'm telling you it does. This is perfect for an entry. Now, say it here for me, folks, if you can. Got Uday, Michael Gillis, John, Rick, all of us here in chat. Hey, if this is such a big level and we jump in, simply put, what should we be getting shortly after we jump in? What's the reaction that we should be getting shortly after we take this type of trade? When a stock breaks through a big level, what are we getting shortly after? We're getting a big move. If the bulls are really in control here, I'm not talking Webull as in bulls. That's a different story. No, but if the actual buyers are in control, then you're going to see it make a sharper reaction than just this. I mean, hey, we're getting close to 10:30. So if this just lays perfectly above this price, if this plays by the rules perfectly and just stays above this flawlessly, and then at 10:30 it goes, fine, I'll take that too. But when this starts to break back below this price, chopping around here, I don't care that it hasn't broken lower just yet until this one candle. Just point being, if this is not making a big move shortly after you jump in and you're following strategy as well as you should be here at Cyber Trading, then you're not the issue. The stock is. Now, you will become the issue if you hold on too long. Yeah, you'll become the issue if you don't set your stop and get out ahead of time here. You realize, oh, this isn't really working out. And then at the latest, of course, once it retests, and re-breaks this level, this is where you could find an exceptional short opportunity. Now, I didn't buy puts on this. I didn't short this right here in my coaching, but I was just going over the failed attempt to seeing support hold. Well, hey, the more times we keep seeing any level getting poked at, it should completely break. And in this instance, once it re-broke under big support, well, you tell me, folks, is this not a big move shortly after? Pretty sure this is a big move shortly after it re-broke through this big 205 level. This became a great short trade off of this price, right? I mean, hey, if I had this type of move here on the bounce, that would be well justified. I'd say, oh, that's definitely not a small move, right? Hey, you could apply the same school of logic towards Intel. I mean, obviously, the market's rolled over collectively here today. We had big resistance on Intel at 21 bucks. Well, the first time it tests resistance here, I am not really expecting a great move. The more times it could keep hitting that level, then I'd be expecting the chance for a pop and a run. So it goes to show it just came back down below this right away and then, yeah, made a big move. This made a pretty big move shortly after, right? Just clearly not in your direction. So, oh, what time is this at? Oh, it's kind of odd, right after 10:30. Pretty funny how that lines up, right? So case in point, at least, is that going into today, there was potential for a bounce. There was potential to see some of these stocks hold or make a better move up afterwards. I wouldn't be hoping to see that be throughout later today. I mean, we'll get into the SPY graph in just a moment. We technically now are at a support, but it's tough to just expect a full-blown slingshot all the way back up by the end of the day today. I mean, market closes in 3 hours, 45 minutes. So I guess we have a little amount of time to see it. But if we don't get that bounce today, it could be tomorrow. It could be Wednesday. It's not to say the markets are going to keep going up perfectly. There's definitely weakness in the stock market. Even if we do push up, I think that there's still so much more fear off the drop than anything. COVID time is a little bit different because we ended up seeing quantitative easing then with the Fed. So they injected all this money into the market back in 2020, 2021. They also ended up having to mess with the rates to just get things back to normal after COVID happened. But more or less, though, to have this two separate times in about 5 years, I don't think the markets are going to be stronger off this recovery than they were coming off the COVID recovery. If you're looking for a recession, a crash, I don't think we're there yet. But I can't sit here and tell you like, oh yeah, we're gonna, have a whole new bull market until 2027, 2020. No, I think that there is a chance that we'll see a larger recession over time. And what really kicks it off is seeing fear and initial sell off, not instant. I was going to say initial sell off. So if we recover from this point, great. Question is, how long do we continue to see this structure continue until? So at least for the time being, let's take a look on my daily chart here for the SPY. Now, you got to go back to last year for this, because even before the sell-off after Trump, went into the office, even before he was talking about the tariffs, you have to look to see where you had past support, because that's likely where you're going to see support continue to develop. Look what happened here. After a gap up from June of last year, we were basing out right around 539. It was 539 even here back in September before it broke new highs. I'll use that, and I'll use this right here, a little slippage under that. Basically, this area, it's 537, 539. But the more that can solidify as support on the daily chart, then I'll expect to see a new run up over time. We just sliced below that from a week or two back. So broken support should, at least initially, become resistance. It's still fighting a little bit here, technically, as a resistance. You'd want to see it close over that area, if not throughout this week, then maybe next at the latest. But I'm sure in due time we'll continue to see support begin to build again, and just really hinging on this area. This area together holds as support. So at least going into this afternoon, we'll see where it takes us. But probably throughout this week, we'll see more confirmation of if we're going to get support to hold there or not. And remember, if we're not going to get support to hold there over time, then it's going to be tougher to swim upstream. So for stocks like Apple, Tesla, Nvidia, et cetera, hey, keep your focal point on the SPY going forward. That's what I'll tell you. Now, though, at least where we take a look at the markets right now, obviously we saw the markets break lower here. This was at 11:30 in the morning, pretty much simultaneously, right? Pretty much simultaneously here. It ended up holding this as resistance after and then dropped. So let's take a look overall on the Apple chart, at least here. We'll see where we have support coming up, at least live right now. We're obviously well below that 205 level. Where is our next support level? Where is our next support level? I'm just looking for one number, one answer, folks. What's our next support level? 200. John, Michael, Margaret, all of us saying here in chat. Yeah, I mean, it shows right there, right? I mean, it shows a 132,000 share order on the ask. And actually notice here, because this will allow me to transition over towards the Webull trade. Notice that you have these iceberg orders mostly, I don't know, 197 kind of on its own, but mostly at the $5 and $10 numbers, 190, 200, 210, 215, 220, and I'll probably go up and see even further. 225, 230, 240, 245, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So typically off of the $5 and $10 numbers, you're more likely to find icebergs. You're more likely to find put call volume around those prices, of course. Now, if we're doing that for Apple, then we could certainly do that type of strategy for Webull. Oh, just a bull. There we go. Bull. There we go. Webull was an IPO from the end of last week, I guess on Friday afternoon. After just laying flat for all day, ended up making a late afternoon breakout. I wasn't watching this at the time. I had no idea this was even going on. In fact, I didn't even realize this was an IPO until like pre-market this morning. I saw Rich make a post on it. When the hell did Webull become IPO? And they flew under the radar because normally they'd even be on my Benzinga calendar here. They were not even on the calendar, at least. See how it's spinning? I don't even know what this is. Buy, sell, US dollar. They don't even have the company listed here in their calendar. So I had no idea this was even happening until basically like 9 o'clock in the morning. Now, with that said, I didn't trade this stock. There was one point where there were 2 points on this trade where I was thinking about jumping in. One point where it just ran away without me right away. I just said, okay, not the right time. There was a moment just before where I could have jumped in and it just didn't fill me. It just didn't hit my number. So, first off, it's easy to say this has moved up throughout the morning, right? If only we lived 100% off of hindsight vision, right? Again, if we did that, you and I wouldn't have a need to be on a YouTube on a Monday afternoon, right? Or you and I wouldn't have a need to be in a webinar room here at CTU. This is just where I'll tell you that, hey, we'll go over this move here, but the same principles that we just actually went over with on Apple, well, they played out here on this trade, just flip it upside down. Think about $50 here, for instance. $50. That's likely to be a huge psychological level. $10 number, hell, that's half of a century, right? 50, half of 100. So that's likely to just be a huge level based off of just fact that it's more round number. You're going to see more volume off that price level, at least likely. When the market did open up, that was the case. Start to see a little volume build at 50 bucks early in the morning here, but it was more after the market opened up. The more it started to move up, 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 up. You did have resistance building here, showing at first at 50. Either way you cut it, this is a level that we strongly advise to be like a psychological level. It's an assumed level of support resistance. Now here, the first time it hit it, no support, held perfectly and then came back down. Now, I will say here, it broke over the level and it moved up pretty nicely, like a 5-point move actually off of this resistance, right? I wasn't, trading it at this point yet. I wasn't thinking about it just yet. Pardon me. Let me go back 1 second here. Let me actually give you the 100% story. The first thought I had of jumping in was around 32 bucks. It reopened up here and it just kept going. So that's where I loosely told you. I had two thoughts of trading the stock. The first of which, it just moved up so fast without me. It just wasn't in the cards. That was it for me around 32. Now at 50 bucks, I will say though here, when it breaks over this as resistance right here, and it does move off it pretty well, like a 5-point move, you could begin to think that that 50 could flip into support. There could be a thought there. Now you'd need to see it break under and over the level. Under and over the level, just like Apple did here at this support. Well, you got to see Webull look to break under this and right back over this. It looks like it just broke under it and just collapsed. So it's no surprise that this became resistance again here. Dropped off a bit more. Now, I was on a coaching call with a student just earlier, and we're just going over actually much easier moves than this, much simpler stuff than a category like 50 stock like Webull. But it's just to mention, though, that the more this kept knocking its head on this resistance, especially the more times it does it in a smaller period of time, I'd feel better about the breakout. But let me have everyone answer this for me if you can. I see Millard S. here joining us from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I see Terry from Dallas, Texas. I see Uday from Edison, New Jersey there. Got Wendy, of course, from Massachusetts. Wiz from Prague joining us there. Good evening, Wiz. When a stock breaks over resistance and it runs from it, we're looking for resistance to flip into what again? What are we looking for resistance to flip into? Support. When it broke over this level here and first moved up, I was looking for the pullback. And just before, right over here, I was like thinking about jumping in. I had an order actually set. Let's see, would it have filled me? Would it have dropped down? This wouldn't have filled me. This still would not have filled me. I tried getting an entry closer to 50 bucks just before here. My order was out at like $50.20. So I would have been fine with that, at least as long as it stayed above 50. Case in point, it just didn't drop low enough to get me filled. Either way, that resistance did flip very well into support here for it to move up higher afterwards. Right? So at least this was a viable move. It just didn't fill me where I wanted it to, but this resistance basically flipped pretty well into support. And you can go a step further. I mean, 50 is an assumed level. That's where we should expect to have at least some formative iceberg, some formative, level of support resistance. Look at this purple line that I just plotted. This actually looks like a better chart level, like right over here. I mean, touched obviously at the very tippy top here. But what makes it stand out better even is that it held this one bar as support, even again here a little bit as support. It broke below that there is support, so that should become resistance. I mean, this is holding much better in terms of an actual price on the chart compared to the assumed level at $50. In a shoulda, coulda, woulda thing, if I'm looking back in hindsight myself right now, maybe I could have tried to jump in over this as an acting support. I wanted to get closer to that $50 price. I'm focused more so where the volume is trading at. So, case in point, maybe I could have gotten in if I used this level instead, but I'm not crying over spilt milk. This was on 50 shares. It's not like this would have made me more money than THTX did earlier this morning. So, just to point out, yeah, resistance did actually flip into support. And it's starting to move back up a little bit now. Hey, maybe there could be a new entry on this trade later on today, because if we're still focused around those $10 price levels, $50, after that, you could say, obviously, $60. Let's see if there's any sort of iceberg order out there right now. Yeah. I mean, look at this. From earlier here, 15,000 shares on the ask. Looks like that's been out there since, a good portion of the morning. Not all morning, but been out there since basically 11 o'clock, 10:55 in the morning. It is currently 12:26. So to see this order be out there for as long as it was, and it got broken through, it got hit. This order got filled, big spikes. Now it's getting retested soon enough here, I think, right? Pulling back a little bit. The more this keeps testing this 60, especially in a smaller frame of time, let's say if it comes back up here by 5 or 10 minutes from now, the more it keeps eating away at $60 in a smaller concentration there, I feel better about the next leg. You got a lot of people talking about Webull as if it's the next Newsmax, where we saw Newsmax make this giant pop off of its IPO day over day. Well, obviously it came crashing back down. So that's the fear about trying to swing trade Webull right now. But is it impossible for there to be a new move on this stock later today? Hell no. It is absolutely possible that we could see more out of the stock later on, but it's got to play nice. It's got to play by our rules. Last thing that I want to do is try and roll the dice and play casino on a trade that I can't get out of. Next thing I know, it's halted to the downside and I can't get out. Next thing I know, I'm a jackass and I try and hold overnight. You know what's going to happen there, right? So this is where I'll just tell you here, there's still opportunity for this to make a better move, but it's got to play by our rules. And that's not selfish as if it's like, it needs to do what we want it to, or otherwise what we're looking for it to do is based off of strategy. It's based off of what happens much more often than not. So, if I jumped in at $50 here and held on all the way through, I wouldn't say that's a great trade. I'd be happy about making money, but I wouldn't say that's like great management. I don't mind taking a small loss to get back in if I'm able to down the line. So if this makes like another pop and drop off of 60, it's okay to take that trade as long as you have your stop set. Play the 30-second rule. When a stock breaks through a big level, we should be getting a big move shortly after, right? So let's focus on that. And the more it fails to make that big move that you're looking for, that's a giant red flag. That's how I'm going to play this every time. Now, we'll take a look at this live again in just a moment. I'm sure that this will try and make a push back up to 60 here soon enough, whether it's going to really break it and run higher or if it just tries to test that level and see what happens off that resistance. But we'll come back to this trade in about 5 or so minutes. All right. All right. So let's go back into Bitcoin land here. Bitcoin land. Get a quick update from where we left off last week. So if you recall last week in Traders Talk, I was showing you this indicator called the M2 Global Money Supply. And long story short, I was giving you this pattern where basically, for the most part, as the global money supply here was moving up, 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 Bitcoin here, up, 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 up. When the money supply drops off, down, 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 Bitcoin itself over time drop back down, down, down. So where we left off 7 days ago, last week, we were saying, listen, within about 30 to 35 days, I'm expecting a giant run back up again, new bull market, and it's simply based off of this. Now, since that time, we've already started to bounce from 1 week ago, back on Monday the 7th. We bottomed out at 75,000. Now we're back up 10,000 points, 9,000, 10,000 points. So I just want to show this to you because where I introduced this, metric, this number. I was saying basically the way to use this is, traders see value in two separate numbers here. You could offset this by 108 days, and it'll show a pretty good correlation up and down with like, beginning of last year to today. There's another number though that people use. It's either 108 days or this one here, 76. There's, reason to use both. Some use one, some use the other. I'm open-minded to both. And where I say that, well, look what happens with the 108. There's still time to see this shake around before the beginning of May, where the M2 global money supply flies. So if I'm using this number 108 days here to offset, technically there could be a little bit more room for a pullback before one more blast way higher. There's a thought for that to happen. I don't think we're breaking lower. I think the bottom's in at this point, folks. So I'd feel very confident if you're holding on long term. Now, if you're using this number here, though, 76, instead of that 108 number, if you're using the other number here, 76, well, I think that we're in the beginning of the bull market. So that's where I tell you, I feel pretty confident regardless, no matter how you cut this pie. I'm pretty certain by like May into early June, Bitcoin itself is back up towards 100,000. Do with that as you will. I've already bought from last week. I was trading it from the last couple of weeks up and down, up and down. You know me though, and long term, I am uber bullish on Bitcoin. The midterm, the long term, uber bullish. So I am looking for a better move back up over 100K, go up to 125, if not, sooner than later. As long as this M2 global money supply is still pushing up a little bit here over time, if it's not crashing down hard, I still have reason to believe that we're going to go up more. So at least for right now, Bitcoin's at 84,000, 85,000. But within the next 1 week's time, what would that be? 21st, obviously. Well, we could be even higher. We could be back up towards like 92,000, 93,000. It would not shock me whatsoever if by next Monday we are back at 92, 93,000. All right, so just wanted to give you a quick little update on that. Linda Randy saying you in Bitcoin through the ETF, Josh? IBIT? Nope, not here on my position manager. Just Bitcoin. I'm doing leveraged positions on Coinbase. So, they'll offer leverage on Coinbase.com, but you got to make sure that you have like margin for you to still use. And I'm basically doing that. I swing traded IBIT. This was a little while ago, maybe from the end of last year, even from $39, 38, $39. Joyce, Michael, a bunch of us here were in it, killed it. Wish I could say I got out at the tippy top. No, but it was still a great swing trade at the time. As far as Bitcoin itself, though, it really doesn't matter what you're buying. It's all going to move exactly the same. Let me retract everything I just said there. That's a lie. If you are looking at IBIT, this right here, this is the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. This will move 100% with Bitcoin. If you don't like Bitcoin, but you want to trade it, IBIT's your way to go. Now, with that said, not everything else will move with Bitcoin perfectly. MSTR could move with it pretty well, but this is a publicly traded company, and Bitcoin is Bitcoin. They are two separate beings, my friends, no matter how much Michael Saylor buys more. So, of course, MSTR could look to make a good squeeze with Bitcoin, as it likely will, but it's not going to be nearly as identical as IBIT is to Bitcoin. Watch, ready? Obviously, if you are a Bitcoiner already, then you know. But if you are not a Bitcoiner yet, then you should look to know. This is the Bitcoin to USD graph on the bottom here. And I'm correlating it with the IBIT. IBIT on the top, regular Bitcoin on the bottom, right? The only difference is that Bitcoin, I believe, here shows every single day of the week, including weekends. And this obviously is excluding weekends because it's Monday to Friday, IBIT, right? But that's just where I'll tell you. Otherwise, it's nearly identical, the correlation between the two, right? So totally feel safe if you're trading IBIT instead. And if you don't see me in IBIT, just realize I'm in Bitcoin. I'm in Bitcoin there. So you're in good hands regardless there. Now, I did swing trade Mara from Friday, the end of last week, into this morning, and I got out already at that point. So this is where, at least from Friday, the end of last week, we were talking about this potential move up and basically pointing out with Bitcoin that we ended up seeing a nice spike up in volume on Mara. See if I can get this showing here for all of us in chat. Just give me a quick moment if I can here. Probably need to scroll up a small amount. Bad radio right now. Give me a brief moment. Here we go. Finally. Taking freaking forever right now for me to load this up right now, folks. My apologies. 1 second here. I want to show this because if you're a member in our trading floor, it is extremely important to follow what we're talking about inside the text, inside the chat. You know, when you log in inside the trading room early in the morning, you need to be scrolling up and seeing like, what is Fausto calling out? What is Josh calling out? What is Rich calling out with the icebergs? So from Friday, this was the end of last week, I made this post here. This was from the 11th at 1:30 in the afternoon. I was saying, wow, Mara had a pretty big green spike of volume just before. Is this a prelude to the Bitcoin run over the weekend? Obviously, right away after I said Mara moving well with Bitcoin, there's my smiley face guy. But I just brought that to you because this was a swing trade that I had from Friday, the end of last week. Ended up making a pretty good move off of the 1250-ish or 1225-ish at the time. That was my entry, 1225. Got out this morning in pre-market, just early at some point here. Or maybe it was after the open, one of the two. Oh, it's not showing my exit here. Why is it not showing my exit here? I ended up getting out basically just to take the money and run off of like 12.99 just to get out before the open. But case in point, though, is that obviously a lot of things will look to move with Bitcoin over time here. But if you're looking for the best correlation, if you're worried about like, you know, pop and drop, if you're looking for other stocks to, you know, not really move up as well as Bitcoin, then you got to go with IBIT. IBIT is your best bet. Mara here is a mining stock. So if you compare Mara to Bitcoin graph, clearly this is not moving up higher as Bitcoin's starting to bounce. It hasn't been, right? This has only been going lower and lower. So if you're new to Bitcoin, I just want you to realize that there's a couple of tickers that will go really well with it, but most of them are affiliated with Bitcoin, but they're not Bitcoin. They're totally separate companies. So trust me, I learned the hard way because I was in love with Mara like 8 years ago, not even 4 years ago. And it made a nice pop at first, but it was crashing way harder than Bitcoin was at the time. So that's where I'll tell you at least IBIT will be your best bet. Let's go back to Bull. Let's go back to Webull because, yep, here we go. Hot soup. Let's see if this could at least flip 60 into support now, right? You know, blew right over this level. Pretty decent jump up. It's not just a little nip of the level and back down. I mean, it broke higher. It popped up 4 or 5 points pretty much. If it plays nice and stays over this as support, then we're getting the next leg up pretty fast. We're getting the next leg up rather fast, actually. I had a question that came in through private chat just before from one of our new trial members, Steven, asking us here, do you tend to use any indicators when you're trading? Simple answer is no. Simple answer is no. Less is more, honestly, with me. So, you know, when I open up my mouth, I don't want my words to jumble up your thought process. Short answer is no. Here, we're in a live workshop. I'm not trading right now, and I hope that no one else really is like jumping and jumping out like, hey, if you're in from a lower price, ride this wave out perfectly. But you know what? Since we got the time right now, I'm not, you know, too serious about taking any sort of trade right now. Then this is where we can, you know, mess around and use a couple little indicators. One of them that I do like in this instance is what's called a Fibonacci extension line, where you have a definitive bottom here, definitive top, and then your higher low, your second bottom at a higher price level here. So bottom, top, bottom. And what this does effectively is it, you know, creates potential levels going forward for the stock to work with. So basically like 71 bucks could be a technical level coming up ahead. Looks like $59.82 is a projected level right here. That's kind of coincidental. What price were we just focused on, folks? What price had that iceberg order on Bookmap just a moment ago there? What were we just looking at just before? What price? We're just focused at 60 bucks there, right? We were just focused on 60. Is this not just where we had this iceberg order that we were talking about? Right? Is this not the price we were just talking about, this iceberg order? Right? 1 + 1 does not equal 27, folks. 1 plus 1 equals 2. And that's where I'll tell you that we have a Fibonacci level solely based off of the pattern here, solely based off just up and down movement. We have some Fibonacci level at 59.82. And at the same time as we had that, technical analysis level, well, we have this massive iceberg order just mere pennies above it. So I absolutely believe that this is a strong enough area to act as resistance. And if it wants to run higher, then let's see it hold cleanly as support. Would it shock me if it breaks below this here? No, not at first. The question is it going to play nice generally? Is it going to at least generally hold over 60 area here and then run higher? Lyndon Randy asking, assuming Fibonacci extension level mimics level 4? No, not really. They're two totally separate things. That's what I'm mentioning. Since they're two totally separate things and they're showing pretty much a really similar, if not exactly same price level, that's where I just say 1 plus 1's 2. When we have the same price level acting as a major support or resistance, but there's two totally separate causes for it, it's what we would just say there's confluence there, right? So yeah, there's confluence between the Fibonacci levels and that Bookmap level at 60. That's for sure. Look what's happening right now, right? Starting to play nice here so far. Now, what's our next Fibonacci area that we had there? Just messing around with that, stupid indicator. I say stupid to honestly belittle it. Yes, that's true because my focus is 99% of the time on level 4. So, hey, for anyone that uses fibs, I'm not trying to insult you here, but our main strategy here is volume. And the more that we're focused on the little things like this, then we're not going to focus on the important things that we should be focused on, volume. Now, I will say, though, that our next fib level here seems to be just around 71 bucks. Well, hey, kind of aligning that up with the fact that, like we'd said, typically at these $10 price levels, there should be some formative support resistance. There should be. There isn't really just yet, though, at 70 bucks. There's not really any, resistance showing here this time on Bookmap. This seems to be, a Fibonacci level. It's a decade level, either way you cut it, 70 bucks. So maybe there could be a pretty big iceberg order out there coming up on Bookmap. There just hasn't been yet. So, as long as this holds over 60 here and moves up, you know what? There's a chance where this could possibly blow right over this perhaps even and keep trucking up. I mean, this technically is all-time highs, right? So there's no historical data to work with here preventing it. This is where you mainly need to keep your focus on Bookmap, if anything, because you might see orders pop up suddenly over time. I mean, even here, look what happened once it broke over 60 as resistance. Look what became support. Obviously 60, but we had a 10,000 share order just pop up out of thin air. That's what helped this stock propel up a little bit more right now, I think. All right, so give me a quick sec here, folks. Just going to make sure that we're all good to go on the YouTubes, on Facebook Live, our social media streams here, just joining us. Great to see Dell joining us here. If that is the Dell that I'm familiar with here, then Dell, great to have you back. Longtime student of CTU, perhaps. Dell H, perhaps? Canada? Let me know. But otherwise, folks, let me know if there's any other trades you'd want me to focus on here. We're not going to jump off just yet, but we'll probably finish up in the next 5 or 10 minutes. Go back to Bitcoin price action here. I'm trying to push back up a little bit. So, at least throughout this whole week, I'm obviously rooting for a nice move up. But if we have a little slippage tomorrow, tonight, it will not shock me at the least. If you really want to see Bitcoin strength against the overall markets, this is something I could show you here pretty quick. So this graph here is Bitcoin, right? This graph here is Bitcoin, right? Going up and down. What is the relationship here? It's Bitcoin to what? Bitcoin to what this graph is? Gillis in the chat, Rick saying it in the chat. The US dollar, right? And technically, how many USDs? How many USDs? Well, Gillis saying the current price of Bitcoin, 84,600, right? Well, to $1, right? This is, one Bitcoin is $84,630, right? So this is Bitcoin to $1 US. Much like Tesla, right? What is Tesla here? Tesla to the US dollar, right? Trading $248.52 or whatever the hell, right? It's to $1. Now, the reason I bring this up at least is because, well, on TradingView chart here, let me just get this back up. I'll delete my money supply there. This is Bitcoin to the US dollar, right? Now, if you want to see Bitcoin's relationship to the SPY or to the SPX rather even, this is Bitcoin's relationship right here to the S&P. This is a daily chart. So it's not to say that when this goes up that the whole market is going up, but this is simply Bitcoin's relationship to the S&P 500. So what's interesting here with this graph is that we had, in my eye, a little bit of support right around here. Kind of we'll say these two prices together. We'll say these two prices together holding pretty well as support from early December all the way to end of Feb, right? I think that we could all sit here and say from the beginning of December here to basically the right side of my chart, this was a strong support area, right? Well, it broke below it. It ended up breaking below it over time and crashed. That should initially become resistance. That should be. Over time it did, but it broke back over it. And as of right now, technically, we're holding above it. Now, compare that at least to the regular Bitcoin graph. Well, this is the support level basically that we were just focused on, right? From the beginning of December to basically the middle of February. Is Bitcoin back up here yet? No. But what this means to me is that Bitcoin is holding stronger in relation to the S&P as this is all happening. Right now, Bitcoin has been holding pretty damn well in relation to the S&P over the last couple of weeks. It's been moving up more as the markets were kind of stagnating more a little bit. So this is where I'll tell you, as long as we stay over this area here in this graph, Bitcoin to SPX, then I'm definitely led to believe that in due time, we're going to see a launch here like no other. We're going to see a giant pop like no other the longer we do stay back above that support. So just wanted to show that to you pretty quickly before we jump off at least. You know, I've shown that from time to time over my years. I don't always show that one graph there, but if you wanted to see a correlation between Bitcoin and the S&P, that's what you do there. And so far, we're looking pretty good. All right, folks. Any last questions for us before we jump off at least here? Rick, Patrick, got Uday, Vince, got you joining us here today. Kathleen, Brian, got Bob, got Alex joining us here. Got all of us on social media joining us here as well, perhaps Facebook Live, LinkedIn, YouTube, etc. And actually, one of our longtime students just maybe on the road today, maybe just not in the trading room. Ravina, great to have Ravina here joining us. So, and one of our longtime students, great to see you, Ravina. All right. So last call, folks. We're going to hang out here for the next minute before we jump off. From Lynn and Randy, levels before we leave. Well, that's what we were just discussing before. These are the levels currently. This is all I'm focused on right now, right? We just went over that here. So I would keep your focus on 60, keep your focus on 70 next. This area together should be resistance. Maybe there's an iceberg order that will pop up after we finish up, and we'll definitely let you know at least, over time. After 70, your next resistance is 80. $10 levels, just go with. All right. Hey, let me ask really quickly. Lynn and Randy, Bell, Kathleen, is anyone in this right now live? Anyone riding this out currently? Anyone jump in from earlier, just hanging on to 1 share, 10 share, 50 shares? I'm just asking to ask. If you are in, let me know, please. If you are not in, do not just jump headfirst in right now. There you go, Patrick. Nice. He was in and out from earlier, but up a bit. Good. Folks, cool. All right, folks, hey, we're going to finish up at least for right now. If you're inside our live trading room, you certainly know best. We're going to be right back here at 2:30 p.m. Eastern later on this afternoon. Afternoon meeting time, we'll rescan the market, build up a whole new watch list for you, taking you into the market close. Now, if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, Scan that QR code on the corner right there. You'll actually have access to a live workshop that we'll be conducting later this week. If you wanted to go right to our trading room, you can go right down to the link on the banner below, scrolling in blue, ctu.co/trial. We do this workshop live every Monday afternoon at 12 o'clock Eastern time. Hope that you enjoyed. We'll come right back here this time next week. But again, we're going to continue inside our live trading room coming up for all of our members there. All right, folks. But otherwise, have a great rest of your week.